Welcome to the show, Meeting Interesting People. Today my guest, I would say my former student
Yeah, yeah.
from my Chinese painting class in Arlington Educational Center, Pearce. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And I was fascinated when I was looking at your website when sometimes we just exchange some information and I was asking questions on what my students doing, what other things. And so that here we can see some artwork you've done before, the watercolor, and this bird I know, and the waterfall, it was done during the class. So it's a beautiful artwork, and it's only a one hobby you have. And so I would like to tell our viewers that you have a man with many hats. And
Right.
you can start using your hats and tell us step by step about yourself, please.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to wear some hats from this personality system I teach called the Enneagram. But in terms of some of the hats I wear, I lead bird and plant walks.
Yes.
I do art. I enjoyed your class. I want to do much more ink painting. I think it's one of my favorite.
Thank you.
I've written these books.
Yeah.
I'm a singer. So I do stand-up comedy. I think you do too, right?
Well, not stand-up comedy
When you
yet.
sit down? Okay.
Well, I did was participating in plays and like some musicals, as you
Yeah,
did when.
as I did when I was in the Navy a long time ago. We were talking beforehand.
Right, right. So let's start. First, you will tell us a little bit about yourself, that
Okay.
you were born in Kentucky.
I was born in Kentucky, but I lived most of my childhood in Louisiana, so I'm certainly a Southerner.
Okay.
But I've been in Boston 40 years as of June 14th.
Wow. So, and I know your first love was photography.
Yeah,
You were doing a lot of photographs.
right.
And the Navy, it was just a treat, right?
It was just a treat. I actually went to photography school after the Navy.
Ah, okay. But you
So-
already taken the pictures while you were in
Even
the
as a kid, I've always been taking pictures. So it actually helps me do art because I can see photographs very quickly.
Okay. So we will put on our show, when the people were watching, they will see the website. They can
Okay.
look maybe more information. They will be interested to know about you and your hobbies and your profession. So, and now let's start with your profession. So you become as a counselor,
Mm-hmm.
and please continue.
Yeah, I'm a psychotherapist. I particularly work with couples, but I work with individuals and families too, on relationship dynamics, ways to improve communication, understanding personality differences. In the Navy, I was a race relations instructor for a while, and then for years I taught courses on gender differences and ways to bridge that. So for the last 28 years, I've been teaching this system called the Enneagram, which is a 9-type personality system that talks about these 9 styles of how you pay attention differently than other people. There's actually hundreds of styles. There's all kind of subcategories, but it starts out with 9. And so I use that working with people. I teach workshops on it publicly, on the Enneagram. And the Myers-Briggs, I teach that too. And then I do team building for organizations so that teams can work together more
Right.
effectively.
So, and I know it's mentioned on your website that it's like you have an experience for 35 years working as a counselor on a different personalities.
It's actually almost 40 at this point.
40.
That was a while back. I need to update my website.
Right. Yeah. So let's give some teaser to
Okay.
our viewers about your first book. Enneagram
Enneagram Basics,
Basics.
was my
Right.
first book.
Right. Let's talk first about this book, and you will introduce all these personalities to
Right,
us.
I'll introduce those personalities. So in all the other books, there's the Enneagram Beyond the Basics,
Right.
which is advanced. There's
Yeah.
the Caregiver's Enneagram, which is more about if you're caring for a parent or anyone you're caring for. All the stories in the book are about how the types interrelate in that situation. And my recent book is Presidential Profiles Washington to Trump, Enneagram and Myers-Briggs Perspective. So it goes through all the presidents from Washington through Trump, 44 presidents, we say there's 45, but there's
Right.
only 44
Right.
because Grover Cleveland was
Right.
twice president.
Right.
And there's personality stories, their loves and losses. So it's more about their personal lives and their Enneagram and Myers-Briggs types. And I've been giving a lot of talks on that. And then Herb's Tips for Living is about 23 areas of life, just some tips to stay balanced on a daily level in these areas of life.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, you have the same name, Herb.
Right.
And you said you got this from, you were named after your uncle.
I was named after my uncle Herb, and Sunday I gave 2 talks on herbs in the Enneagram. So I do herbal studies too. I'm a student of herbs.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay,
I'm
so
getting into
let's
that.
start with Enneagram basics.
So
please.
let me talk about each type.
Yes.
I'm going to wear a hat for each type. This
Yeah.
is a perfectionist, a Puritan hat. The Puritans came to America for religious freedom, but they didn't give much religious freedom to anyone else. They ended up hanging a witch on the Boston Common, who was, I think she was a Quaker, so they weren't, So ones are called a perfectionist, or a higher level is the reformer.
Mm-hmm.
This is a person who's always striving for perfection and doing things right. They tend to be right, wrong. They often use gestures like this. You can often type people by the hand gestures they use and their voice tone. I taught a workshop for ones last night, and they're very decisive, and they want to do things right, and they don't like gray tones or things that are ambivalent. They really they work hard to do a good job.
I think it's my daughter.
Yeah, I mean, they cross the T's, they dot the I's. They're very morally driven, so they're generally honest. 11 of our 44 presidents have been type 1, which at least we can say whether we agree with them or not, they're fairly honest. They're consistent. They tend to do they have very
So they're leaders.
They're leaders, definitely. Yeah.
Okay,
And so that's a little bit about one. I can
Right.
just a little bit about one.
right.
So type 2, now we have traits of all 9 types. It's just the dominant type is the one that you typically lead with the most. It's the way you think and operate. The 2 is the helper.
Uh-huh.
So I want to give to you. If you have a need, I want to meet it, and I want you to appreciate and love me for meeting that need. That's what I'm looking for, is that affirmation. Of course, I'm not going to tell you that. So I hide my needs, but I'm happy to meet your needs. But I want you to love and appreciate me, or occasionally give me some gifts, though I tend to be resistant to receiving. So it can be a challenge to relate to 2s because they want something back, even though they don't acknowledge it, but they tend to say, oh, you don't need to give me that. So they like it when you have needs they can meet, but they can be smothering.
So are they shy by nature?
No, they're not shy.
Oh,
They're
okay.
actually quite the opposite. They tend to be fairly assertive in their giving.
Oh,
Okay. And
remember I gave you my gift.
yes, there's a guilt-inducing mechanism here in the 2. And they can be kind of seductive and manipulative toward pleasing you, and they can be smothering. So they sometimes might give to you when you haven't asked for it. So that's where but if all you have to do is appreciate it too, and they'll just keep giving. So it's a type that actually doesn't mind being utilized as long as you appreciate their giving. There's a way to relate to every type. That's my specialty.
Right.
That
Because,
works very
yes,
effectively.
for couples specifically.
And I coach people, and we practice skills in the sessions. So that's 2, very positive and upbeat. Whereas ones, the perfectionist, can be a bit critical, because they're always looking at what the dead leaves on the plants and pulling them off. It bothers them, or straightening the pictures, because they want to do things well.
Right. But as you mentioned that each type has a little bit of each person. It's like the number 1 can have 2 and 3 and some.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's usually a sequence, like your secondary type. Say a 2 might have a secondary type of 3, the achiever. So they'll have qualities of that. So, for instance, I'm a 974, but we'll get to that later in terms of sequence. So a 3 is the achiever. My focus of attention is not on perfection necessarily, or on giving, though I can do both, but it's mostly on achieving. I want to win. I love to compete. I like to win, and I like to be rewarded
It's
wealth.
mostly like
What I,
sport, people involved in
it could
sport.
be sports, but it could be being an entrepreneur,
Ah,
business,
okay.
particularly in business.
Business. Okay.
They're often leaders too. Um, Sales, you see a lot of threes, but anything that can make money in this culture, money's what's valued often. And so you'll see threes doing whatever they can, or they'll cross the finish line at the Boston Marathon. That's their dream. They
I
want
see.
the praise and reward that comes from accomplishment.
Okay.
Yeah, from reward. So, and they can. They're very goal directed. They always know where they're heading. They work hard to complete tasks that they're driven toward to complete goals. Okay.
Well,
You
so
saw the reason this hat, by the politicians often might be threes. All the types are there.
okay.
Bill Clinton would be a good example. John Kerry, who's near here. Mitt Romney.
Okay.
You
As
know,
achievers.
Yeah, they're all high achievers, and image is really important. So they'll wear a different hat for different groups. So they're very image driven.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking that it's connected to your presidential book, but.
Yeah, George Washington, our first president, was a 3. He wasn't that honest. He was trying to portray an image of honesty, but he really wasn't particularly honest.
Okay.
He would do whatever it took to win.
Yeah.
So the 4, the romantic, or the depth seeker. Matter of fact, there's only one president who's a 4, the Abraham Lincoln, who was a very emotional guy. 4s typically are very emotional, very aesthetically driven, very focused on beauty and depth and longing for something more ideal. They particularly are drawn to pain, loss, and suffering. They're aware of that. It's the only type that kind of, some ways over-focuses in that arena of life. Lincoln certainly suffered a lot. He had a lot of close people in his life die, which is not unusual for the time, but he was pretty depressed, and he had a number of suicide watches on him. But still very successful guy. He had a 3 wing. I'll talk about wings in a
Right,
little bit.
but is that applies for like composers, writers,
Yeah, it would be more writers, composers. Again, they could be any
Artists.
type artist, but
Yeah.
particularly anyone who's highly emotional, very focused on being unique, different, maybe dress uniquely, moody. They might change clothes several times a day based on their feeling and mood, highs and lows, more like that. So certainly some artists could fit.
But again, we don't have like one type of personality in one person, or it's like you're talking about the prevail type.
The prevailing type, the
Right,
dominant.
right,
It's the
right.
one that you do without thinking.
Yeah.
It's the one that's so automatic, it's almost impossible
I
not
see,
to do
I
it.
see,
So
I see.
that's why it's important.
But like you said in a workshop, people come in and you said you have basics and then you have specifically for a certain time. So these people already know what
Yeah.
type they are
Right,
when they
right.
come in. Okay, for
Yeah,
advanced
it's for
class.
advanced class,
Right,
yeah,
I get.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But many people come to the basic more than once because it's fun and entertaining
Yeah,
and
yeah,
different
yeah.
depending on the people that show
I
up.
see. I see.
So that's 4. 5 is the rational engineer type. So this is the depth. This is the knowledge seeker. So they're deep, but it's more about objective knowledge. So you might find astronomers or mathematicians. The computer world is very 5.
Okay.
But it could be a musician or a writer who's a little more technically oriented or not as emotional. But a 5 with a 4 wing, which leans into the 4, could have a mix of the two. But
So
basically,
how you qualified or identify Einstein?
Einstein is, I think, a 5.
5. Okay.
Yeah,
That's what I
very
thought.
smart.
Yeah.
These are often genius type people. They can see and kind of see into the future, and they're,
Right.
like he was certainly very mathematically
Right.
oriented and trying to understand the universe.
More physics than math.
Physics,
Yeah.
physics, understanding the universe, that sort of thing.
I see.
Very rational, typically private about their personal life, but wanting to create knowledge and systems of understanding, schema, or organizational thinking, that sort of thing, trying to
see.
understand things in depth. So that's basically 5.
Okay.
Not so emotional. 6 is the questioner, but it's more questioning around security. You can call this type the security seeker. I want to not only put out fires, I want to prevent them. So you'll actually see literally firefighters,
Uh-huh.
possibly, but police, military,
I see.
CIA, FBI, weather people often predicting the future, concern about danger, people, rescue squads, EMTs, emergency medical technicians. You know, they often, on one hand, they might be afraid of danger. On the other
Yeah.
hand, they're drawn to it.
Ah.
They're just tuned in to what could go wrong. They watch banana peels. They watch for
Ah.
banana peels, you know. So they can be very protective and helpful and preventative for
Yeah.
for all of us. So they can be good, but they can seem negative because they're always concerned and worried
It
about
seems
what
like the
could go
God
wrong.
knows what He's doing. He put this different
Yeah, we
type of
need all of
person.
these.
Yes.
We need all of these.
Yeah.
I think Nixon was a 6, and he did a lot of good things in a way, but he ended up getting too paranoid. You know, if you worry too much, you might get a little paranoid.
Right.
So it's good, but it's good to find a balance.
Right. Well,
All
like,
these types, when balanced, are
Right.
fine. The only problem with each type is they overdo a normal activity. That's it.
Okay.
We do all of these, hopefully, at times, but each type tends to do it 24 hours a day. The 7 likes to celebrate, the optimist. So they're happy birthday. They celebrate it all year round.
Okay.
They're always having a good time.
Positivist.
Positive, but they don't like negativity, so they're almost anti-negative. Like, don't talk about. I don't want to be around negative people. Stop talking about that. Let's only
Okay.
talk positive.
Okay.
So that can be difficult if you need someone
Right.
to
Right.
bleed your heart or to share your feelings
Right.
or pain. This is a type
Compassion.
not to go to.
Right.
They can be
Okay.
compassionate, but they're going to try to cheer you up more. It's going to be like that. They're very, very positive. And again, I'm giving you just a simple
And
explanation.
who is that among the presidents? Do we have one?
FDR. You know, Franklin Roosevelt. I was just at
Okay.
his house the other day. I went
Okay.
on a tour of his
Yeah,
place
you mentioned that before.
in
Yeah.
Hyde Park,
when
and
we talk. Yeah.
he had polio. He had to walk.
Right.
You know, moving his legs. He had to look just moving his legs like that just to move, and he was in pain a lot, but he was still positive.
Wow.
Kennedy was also a 7. And he had braces, all kind of back operations. He was given last rites 4 times before he died. He was in pain a lot, but these guys were so positive and upbeat, and they kind of led the nation with affirmations and positive vision.
Reagan? No.
Reagan was 7-ish. I think he was a 9 peacemaker, but his secondary type is 7.
I
so
see.
it's close.
I see.
He had that kind of positive focus
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so that's 7.
7. Yeah.
8, which
It's like a fairy tale. I'm listening.
I hope you don't mind. I think you might be this. Not that you're only this, but
Well, I know you mentioned something 8 on me, but
yeah. Well, 8s are very direct. It's called the director. They just speak up. They say what they think. A lot of energy, strong energy. They're very action oriented.
yeah.
They are they're leaderful. I mean, they tend to take
I like
leadership.
Crown.
Part, and you like crowns, so there you
No,
go.
yours.
Oh, okay. You can have it if you want.
Yeah.
So yeah, this type is very strong. I think of Martin Luther King, Maya Angelou. I mean, you can get anywhere from. Let me mention maturity levels. If you
Yeah.
have an immature 8, they might be a dictator. But a mature 8 can be incredibly inspiring and
My
empowering.
husband will be happy to hear that. Dictator.
So that's really crucial. Maturity is way more important than type.
I see.
Way more important.
I see.
So no type is better.
So what period of age you recommend that people will really study themselves to recognize what type of personality they have, they can improve in a certain way before they go into like relationship and marriages?
Well, I've taught this a bit. I'd like to do more for teenagers, and I
Right.
think it would be perfect.
Okay. Like
by
high
the
school.
time you're a teenager, your type is pretty well formed
Okay.
on average, and
Uh-huh.
the Enneagram, or at least the way I teach it, is very relationship oriented, and like
Right.
how to relate to each type, and how to appreciate each type, and how to tune into people's maturity levels. That's really important, because relationship building is often about being able to distinguish if someone's mature in ways that will work for you, which might not show up till later. You know, each type has a set of defenses and strengths that are relatively predictable, and there are ways to communicate to each type that will be effective or less effective.
I hope that since we at the Medford Cable TV station So the viewers from Medford will probably recognize how much it's missing in their life, and they
Yeah.
will invite you over to Medford High School to speak for the
I
students.
would be happy to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think
it actually is part of my mission in life.
right,
I
right.
feel like the Enneagram is the best
We need to
tool.
explain our viewers what's the Enneagram. I read the article,
Yeah,
so
yeah. Well, let me talk about type. So
right,
this is type 8,
right.
and I'll talk about 9. Then I'll talk about the derivation of the word and
Okay,
what it is a
sure.
little more deeply. So that's
Okay,
8. So
right.
8s need to learn to be more vulnerable because they're so strong. Each type needs to balance, which I'll comment on after I finish 9.
It's very tempting to put the crown on.
Oh, do you want to put it on?
Sure.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Well, and this is my hat.
You
And
identify me like 8,
yeah,
so
yeah,
we
yeah.
should.
You're definitely an 8. I've typed tens of thousands of people. I'm actually very good at typing.
Okay.
So type 9 is a peacemaker. This is a peace symbol. Where is it?
Yes,
Right
right
here.
there in the front.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And also I think I have another hat that has the peace symbol on it.
Uh-huh.
It says peace, love, and wine.
Oh wow.
Which is about enjoyment and relaxing, but it's very much about enjoying life and well, there we go, relaxing in life and creating harmony. But the tendency in 9 is to avoid conflict too much, so they tend to be not self-driven. 8s tend to know what they want and are more self-driven. They can be very generous too, but the 9 tends to kind of go along with what you want to avoid conflict. So around 9s, you often feel peaceful, but they might be lacking their own passion. They tend to make molehills out of mountains.
Do we have someone among our presidents at that time?
Well, Reagan was a 9, but was with a strong 8 wing. He had some 8, but let's see, James Buchanan. Was it James Buchanan? Anyway, it's one of the several presidents before the Civil War where
Okay.
they were just trying to appease the South,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and just nothing happened. They couldn't make a decision about things. So we've had 5 presidents who are 9s, but 8 presidents who are 8s. Our current president is an 8.
Oh no.
But however you feel about him, I mean, to me he's not the best example of an 8. But Grover Cleveland was an 8, and he was a kind of a police oriented. He got the bad guys, and a lot of people liked him.
I told you that my first roommate in the United States was his grand nephew.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
David Cleveland. Yes.
No kidding. Oh, that's
Homeopathist.
great.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's great. So again, I want to emphasize maturity
Right.
is more important than type. But let me talk about something about the 9 types.
Sure.
So every type is a type because they're avoiding something. Type 1, the perfectionist, is avoiding their imperfection. So if they can accept imperfection and realizing that you can strive for it, but it's not always you can reach it. The 2s try to help others, but they hide their needs. So if they can accept their needs and express what they need and receive, they find the balance. If 3s who are success-driven can accept failure as normal and learn from it, they can relax more and just go, okay, so I failed, so what? I learned.
Yeah, right, right.
If the 4 who's always seeking and searching for depth and meaning and intensity, if they can just kind of enjoy basic day-to-day life, enjoy the flowers and not always be feeling like they're missing something or
Right,
searching
right.
for, they would enjoy life more. If the 5 who's a knowledge seeker can also just realize that you don't have to learn everything, or you don't have to be a perfect expert on everything, or just make knowledge the only thing in life, then there's a nice balance. Share more of their emotion and personal self. If the 6 can accept that sometimes there is security, don't always look for what could go wrong.
Right.
Then you'll be happier. Focus on what's more positive. If the 7, who's really positive and optimistic, it sounds good, but they avoid pain too much. If they can accept pain and problems and difficulties as part of life and not always positivize everything so quickly, they'll be more in balance. If the 8 can share and show their vulnerability and not always have to be in charge, and not 8s are decisive, but sometimes too decisive, kind of, so right. They can hold back a little bit. And if the 9 can be actually more assertive, be more like an 8, the 9 tends to go along and you don't kind of know where they stand. If they can get in touch, and I've done this as myself as a 9, to be more assertive and to go after what I want and try to be successful and productive. That's good for me as a balance. Otherwise, I might just sit around and watch TV.
Right.
Which is, what is that about, you know?
Right. Well, that's why I'm impressed, because you are so motivated, you're moving, you keep learning,
Yeah,
and
always.
that's just so amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to encourage people. It doesn't matter what age you are. You will be 90, but you still can learn something.
Yeah.
And you still to go and search for something
Right.
and do something instead of just, like you said, sit and watch TV. Even we are talking on TV, but still.
TV is good. I watch a lot of history TV.
Right.
I like TV, but I'm always learning while I'm watching.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then that's all about this first book, right? Where
Right,
you explain
right.
all these basics types. And then you mentioned this book, it's about caregiving.
Caregiving. It's
Right.
particularly for people that are in a caregiving process, particularly with parents, most of the stories,
Okay.
but could be your spouse. The Enneagram Beyond the Basics talks
Right.
about all kind of subtypes. There's actually 6 different kinds of types within the same type.
So we practically have like a certain code. So
Yeah.
like
like
you think I'm 8, okay, so, and then I think I have more from other types also.
Which is true. We all
Right,
do. So
right.
there's a sequence
Right.
like you might be an 8, 7, 5, I don't know, but
Right.
an 8 who's an 8, 9, 6 will be different.
Right.
So there's that, and then there's actually a separate version called a sexual subtype of that type, a social subtype, and a self-preservation subtype.
Okay.
And I'll just
So let's say the people who got like just us, we got the basic knowledge, very basic.
very
Because
basic. It's
yeah,
way more
right.
complicated.
It's much deeper
Yeah.
and, like you said, complicated. And then the couple coming, for example, to you, who trying to save their relationship. So what kind of, so you identify their personality, and then you trying to explain which, what they need to do or how they need to work together.
Yeah, I mean, like for instance, I've worked with a 7-2 couple, and the 7's kind of positive and upbeat, and the 2 just wants to please and help. If the 7's not affirming what they're doing, what the 2 is doing, giving, the 2 gets really angry. So that can be a major problem. And the 2 sometimes is not checking in what the 7 actually needs. They're assuming that person needs this or the kids need this. So that can
Okay.
be, there's a lot of assumption making.
Oh, so that you mentioned it's probably will be helpful for the parents when they raising their children.
Absolutely, to understand. I've had a number of parents, for instance, like maybe they have a 4 child who's really emotional and unique and doesn't fit in. Well, they don't want to fit in. That's the whole focus, is I
Right.
don't want to conform.
Right.
So when I explain the way a child is and how if you just listen to their feelings in depth, that's fine. A lot of parents want to change a 4 to be more positive or fit in more. Well, that could be the worst thing. They'll become more reactive. So when you understand that and you do things that the type likes, I've seen people overnight stop fighting and have better relationships.
That's nice. That's very promising.
It's very satisfying to me
nice.
when it works, which it works most of the time. Or even if 2 the same people, I've counseled 2 9s, the peacemaker, but one was a self-preservation subtype that's focusing on the home and money and security, wants to, on the weekends, work on the house. And the sexual romantic subtype wants to go on a getaway weekend to be closer to their partner. So even that subtype difference can be a problem. So when I explain those things, that solves some of it just by saying, this is normal. Anybody with this configuration would have the same issues you would. And I've even taught workshops for the same, like 2-5 couples or 4-9 couples. I work a lot with couples that have a 9 in them because I'm a 9.
Right.
I know that type so well.
Okay, so people can find that information on your website, and you said pre-registration is required.
It's very helpful,
Yeah.
to make sure I have enough people
And the
to.
seminars you're holding in Arlington, so it's not too far from Medford.
It's not too far, and
Yeah.
but I travel. I'm hired by many churches, groups, organizations, women's groups in particular have hired me. There was a sewing circle that I mean, any group of people or just groups of friends. Often
Yeah,
they'll
yeah.
like create a group
But
party.
then you're doing like you said, couples
The counseling.
counseling, yeah. Okay.
And
So
by the way, when I work with people, I've worked sometimes with couples, individuals too, by Zoom and Skype in
Uh-huh.
other states.
okay.
So we're right there, and so
Okay.
it doesn't always have to be
Well,
in
it's practically
person.
can be international also.
It can be international.
Yeah.
Um,
So how many people doing the same type of work, like counseling on the different type of personality?
I don't think a lot of people
That's why for me
focus
it's,
on the
yeah,
Enneagram to the degree because it's my
Right.
whole thing.
Right.
So it's
right,
everyone
right.
who sees me, I use the Enneagram
Right.
as a major tool. Even if I'm not telling them, I usually am very explicit. I type people right off the bat. People always go along with that, but if they're not into that, which is rare, I'm inside. I'm always evaluating and relating to them from their type world.
So are we ready to explain about the Enneagram, the word Enneagram, and
Yeah, well, the word Enneagram actually comes from Greek. Greek word. Ennea means 9, and
Yeah.
gram means type or category. So, it's basically there's 9 types. And the history of the Enneagram is interesting in that, people don't always agree where it comes from, but most major religions have had a mystical order
yeah,
that had some kind of categorization system, whether it was about personality or spiritual development. They would have these like levels of development.
right.
So it relates back to that. Pythagoras actually had its symbol very much like the Enneagram. So Pythagoras, a Greek philosopher in
Right.
like 4th century BC, certainly knew of something that was similar.
Right.
People debate where it comes from. A lot of people say Sufi, etc. But it wasn't until 1970 there was an international conference on the Enneagram by a guy named Oscar Ichazo. I think he's still alive.
Okay.
And Claudio Naranjo, who
So
did a lot of development.
it's kind of a science which is
Yeah.
about 100 years old. Let's say that way.
well-
If you said 1917,
not 1970.
19
Gurdjieff taught it in
Oh,
the
Gurdjieff,
1917,
okay.
and then people often say it's over 2000. One person's talking about the connection to
Yeah.
Egyptian.
right.
So who knows? We don't know.
Right.
But the modern Enneagram, certainly since 1970, all the psychological.
Yeah, the modern.
understanding,
That's what I meant.
more
The modern.
modern.
Yeah. 1970.
Right,
Okay.
and I learned it in 1990, and
Okay.
I trained in it with all the top teachers, and then I started teaching it pretty quickly.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, but you get already experience when you said you were in Navy.
yeah.
You already was kind of a counselor already.
Right. I worked with
So-
educational counseling, and then I did the race
And
relations training.
as you right now conclude that it's mission of your life.
Yeah,
Um,
I love it. I mean,
yeah.
nothing satisfies me more than teaching
yeah.
or typing or coaching people in
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
My focus is on being practical. How can people relate
So you
better?
probably have since I'm doing numerology, you probably have number 3 in your birthday somewhere,
Okay.
somewhere, because you like people.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about this book because we didn't talk much about that one yet.
Well, this is Lessons from the River is about my whitewater canoeing trips that I've done for over 30 years. It has, hundreds of photographs. Every page has a photograph.
Okay.
And it's like the Zen of canoeing. So it's not the Enneagram, though I mentioned
Right,
Enneagram.
it's not an Enneagram. Yes,
it's not an
yeah.
Enneagram book, but it has a lot of poetry, and
So, and the book's available on Amazon.
all the books are available on Amazon, or you can,
Right.
from me,
Contact you.
you can
yeah.
contact me.
Right, right. And like I said, it will be shown on
Kindle,
your
yeah.
website. So, and this is how many years of your canoeing you described here?
Over 30.
30. And what you learned, because it says lesson from the river. So I
So
didn't.
It's like lessons about life. I learned to go with the flow because with the river, boy, you really have to relax. And because I did a lot of intense whitewater canoeing, and I went on a number of trips alone, which is not recommended. These are canoe camping trips. There's mostly rivers in Maine. It's incredible. The St. Croix River in particular, I've done 15 or 20 times. So you learn a lot about relaxing and being in the moment, and going with the flow.
So it's a meditation.
It's like a meditation, but being alert and relaxed.
And there, it's from there you start doing the bird watching and.
Maybe. You know, it's interesting. I've been doing bird watching for 18 years, but you know, on the trips I started watching birds. I never pieced that together, but I think in the plant identification.
And this information people can find also on your website when you're doing leading the groups. And so you're doing on a fresh pond, you said?
Fresh Pond often, or Mount Auburn Cemetery, and people can hire me to lead a walk where I point out bird song, birds, plants, flowers, trees, shrubs, whatever.
Right. The only thing is that it's early in the morning.
Generally speaking, it doesn't have to be.
Oh, it doesn't have to be.
You see more birds, but any time is fine.
Okay.
The plants are going to be there.
Right. Okay, so
trees.
that's another type of your activities. And now we come into the subject about presidents a little bit closer. And if you would like, maybe you can read something from the book.
Oh, yeah, let me see. I haven't, let me just kind of maybe.
We can open randomly and just.
Let me just open it randomly. Let's
check who wants to talk to us. What kind of president?
Let's see. Let's look at Lincoln. You know what?
Yeah.
I can read a poem that Lincoln wrote, and he wrote a lot of poetry.
Sure.
This is my childhood.
And we just remind what type he is?
He's a 4, the romantic.
4. Okay.
The only one. Very unusual for a president who's that emotional to be.
Right.
You know.
Okay.
But he has a strong 3 wing. A wing is an adjacent number that flavors how you sit in your core. So, my childhood home I see again. My childhood's home I see again, and saddened with the view. And still, as memory crowds my brain, there's pleasure in it too. O memory, thou midway world twixt earth and paradise, where things decayed and loved ones lost in dreamy shadows rise, and freed from all that's earthly vile, seem hallowed, pure and bright, like scenes in some enchanted isle, all bathed in liquid light. As dusty mountains please the eye when twilight chases day, as bugle tones that, passing by, in distance die away, as leaving some grand waterfall, we lingering list its roar, so memory will hallow all we've known, but know no more. Near 20 years have passed away since here I bid farewell to woods and fields and scenes of play, and playmates loved so well, where many were, but few remain of old familiar things, but seeing them to mind again, the lost and absent brings. The friends I left this parting day, how changed as time has sped, young childhood grown, strong manhood gray, and half of all are dead. I hear the love survivors tell, how naught from death could save, till every sound appears a knell, and every spot a grave. I range the fields with pensive thread, and pace the hollow rooms, and feel, companion of the dead, I'm living in the tombs.
It's very sad and emotional.
Very sad. He wrote a lot of poetry like this. He was kind of obsessed with death. And he, you know, as you might know, he dreamed of his death three nights before.
He has connection with Massachusetts. The monument, it's in Hingham, Mass, right?
Oh, really? I'm not familiar with that. Wow, I'd like to learn about that.
Yeah. They said it was relatives of his lived there for a while. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do.
So what practically how this book was written, just based on personality types?
Well, I did a tremendous amount of research. So in other words, I typed all the presidents. No one's ever done this before. In other words, I did a lot of research to learn about the presidents. So one, I could be able to feel like I got the type accurate, their core type accurate. So I talk about my process in some of the subcategories and various things. So it helped me understand the nature of each president, as well as kind of the history of the United States in terms of the kinds of types of people who tend to be president. Obviously, more leader-oriented types tend to be, but we've had all 9 types.
Yeah.
And to also kind of burst some of the myths that we have, the bubble, like George Washington was a high achiever, very image-oriented, and not the most honest person, but what we learned in school about history is he was honest. It's not true.
So what about our president who is right now?
What Trump is an 8. But in my opinion, he's got a lot of 3. He's fairly narcissistic. He's focused on himself. He's an interesting guy. I mean, his grandfather, I learned a lot about his grandfather, who was an entrepreneur. He built a lot of hotels in Canada and in the Northwest, taverns, brothels. He made a lot of money. He was really good at getting customers.
Yeah, I think my husband was telling me that.
He ran
story,
a tavern. He with miners, he sold horse burgers to miners on some of the dead horses that would fall on the trail going up to the silver mines. I mean, he was a total entrepreneur. And his father, of course, was a real estate genius, made a lot of money. So, Donald Trump's tradition has been being a strong entrepreneur and learning to make money and not obeying laws a whole lot. Just finding ways around.
See, I don't match for that.
But because you're more mature, you're way more mature. So it's just, again.
So maturity, it's not you're talking about the age. It's maturity.
No, not at all. Matter of fact,
you
find young people that are mature and older people that are not mature at all.
Well, my son, he's telling me he's much maturer than me, so probably. So if, for example, like you mentioned before, this couple can be the same types, right?
Yeah.
And they can get along together well, just to know maybe if they have a problem, which side need to be kind of more showing and less showing.
Exactly. It was another 9/9 couple I counseled recently, and they're doing great. I did 4 or 5 sessions with them, and all I did was to help them be more assertive with each other. They loved each other, and things were working.
So it's not necessarily like you type 1 need to find type 3.
Not at all. No.
Right.
There are some combinations that are generally pretty
better,
hard, like 3, the achiever, with a 6, the security seeker, who's always concerned about. They stop at the red lights and they're going to stop at the yellow light, and a 3's going to go through it. I mean, 3s want to act, and 6s want to research and check things first. So I mean, that could be it could work, but it can be a challenge.
So it's no as a special formula.
No.
Right.
It depends on maturity, subtype.
Right.
And I also, I often type people in the Myers-Briggs and a little bit of astrology.
Yeah.
Too. So I mean, if people want to go into a tremendous amount of depth, we can talk in great detail of the subtleties.
Yeah. Well, I think we cover a little bit each subject of your interest and professional field.
Yeah.
So you can tell people your website, and we will put on our screens anyway. Also.
Yeah.
So
my website is herbpearce.com. That's HERBPEARCE.com. That has my schedule.
Okay.
I have, by the way, it's best to contact me with my email rather than through the contact sheet in my website. It's somehow not working right now.
Okay.
So herb@herbpearce.com is my email address. That's a good way to get a hold of me. And I have a newsletter I send every week with Herb's tips and an article to stay balanced during the week, and it's kind of an inspiration article. And my schedule of events. That's my most current thing. So if you want to get that, just email me that you want to get my newsletter.
Okay.
You can cancel anytime if you know.
Right.
But
Okay, well, thank you for coming and share with us a very interesting subject. I think it's very important because people knows probably better the cars, the computers, but they don't know themselves.
Right.
And we need to start from within to understand who we are.
Yeah.
And work on yourself while we learn.
Absolutely.
And people who will be interested and learn by themselves, again, we remind them the book's available on Amazon or directly through the email. You can email to Herb and he will send you a book whenever you are. It doesn't matter. So, and hopefully some viewers will be interested to visit your workshops.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.